All right, today we're taking a deep dive into Socrates,
Ooh, exciting.
using Plato's Apology as our guide.
Okay.
And just for context, for anyone who needs it, this is Plato's version
Right.
of the speech Socrates gave defending himself when he was put on trial in Athens.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
He was accused of some serious things,
Yeah.
corrupting the youth and not believing in the gods.
Big no-nos.
Huge no-nos back then.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the apology,
Mm-hmm.
it isn't just some, legal document, right?
Right.
It gives us this incredible window into Socratic thought
Yeah.
and really the whole intellectual climate of ancient Athens.
I mean, it's like we're eavesdropping on a conversation that really did shape Western philosophy.
Absolutely.
So Socrates is on trial for his life.
Yeah.
What exactly were the accusations?
Well, the main charges were, like you said, corrupting the youth of Athens
Right.
and then impiety,
Okay.
which basically means not believing in the city's gods. And you can imagine how explosive those accusations were
Oh, yeah,
in ancient Athens,
for sure.
where religion and civic life were like totally intertwined.
Absolutely.
Like talk about a recipe for trouble, right?
Big time.
So,
Because how does he defend himself against these charges?
right.
I mean, he doesn't exactly deny that
Yeah.
he's a bit of a rabble-rouser, right?
He doesn't at all.
Yeah.
In fact, he claims he's on like a divine mission,
Okay.
inspired by, get this, the oracle at Delphi.
Wow.
According to Socrates, the oracle declared him the wisest man alive.
Well, that's a pretty bold claim coming from, anyone.
Right.
I mean, was Socrates the type of person to just accept that at face value?
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
He found it super perplexing
Yeah.
because he's like, I don't know anything.
Yeah, he knew very little, right?
Right. So he set out to test this
Okay.
pronouncement by questioning all these people
Makes.
who were considered wise in Athens. So
All right, so who are we talking about here?
we're talking politicians, poets, artisans, you name it.
Okay, so he's going around poking holes in these people's arguments.
Essentially, yeah.
That must have made him a few enemies.
Oh, he definitely ruffled some feathers.
Yeah.
Big time. He discovered that despite their expertise, a lot of these so-called wise men,
Mm-hmm.
they lacked, true wisdom.
Okay.
They were overconfident.
Yeah,
And really resistant to, examining themselves.
I see.
Like, for example,
Yeah.
he would question poets about their poems,
Mm-hmm.
like the deeper meaning of their poems and stuff,
Right.
often pointing out inconsistencies that they hadn't even considered.
Oh, I can imagine those poets were not too thrilled with that.
No, not at all.
So how does all this questioning, how does this relate to the charges against him?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So Socrates argued that his whole mission
Yeah.
to expose ignorance
Right.
was actually, get this, a service to the city.
Okay.
He saw himself as like a gadfly,
Okay.
stinging the Athenian people.
And to wake them up from their, intellectual slumber. Yeah. That's a pretty vivid analogy.
It is.
But being a gadfly can be risky.
Oh, yeah.
Are there times when it's better to just, stay silent
Totally.
than to kind of, challenge the status quo?
It's a tough question.
How do we find that balance in our own lives?
It's a great question and a really relevant one, even today.
For
You
sure.
know, Socrates clearly believed that challenging complacency
Mm-hmm.
was super important for a healthy society,
Right.
even if it meant making some enemies.
Yeah.
I mean, he seemed to believe that a life without questioning,
Right.
without seeking truth, just wasn't worth living,
Okay.
you know. But it's definitely a delicate balance.
Yeah.
We all have to kind of find our own way
Yeah.
of engaging with the world and speaking up when we need to,
Right.
but also knowing when to,
When to pick your battles.
exactly pick your battles.
Yeah.
So
So going back to the trial, it sounds like he's using his defense as a platform to further his philosophical mission.
absolutely, he's not just trying to get himself off the hook.
Right.
He's trying to make a bigger point.
Right.
He's using his trial to highlight the importance of self-examination
Yeah.
and the pursuit of truth. He's basically saying,
Yeah.
look, if I'm guilty of anything, it's trying to make you think critically.
That's a pretty bold move, especially when your life is on the line.
Right.
But speaking of bold moves,
Yeah.
didn't Socrates actually claim he deserved a reward
He did.
rather than a punishment?
He did when asked to propose a penalty.
Yeah.
Instead of pleading for leniency, what does he do?
What?
He suggests that he be given free meals
What?
in the Protanium,
Really?
a place reserved for distinguished citizens.
Wow, so classic Socrates.
Right.
So knowing that his life is in danger, how does he approach death?
Well, he approaches it with,
Yes.
I think, a surprising amount of calm
Yeah,
and
right.
even curiosity.
Right.
He contemplates a couple of possibilities, right?
Mhm.
He says either death is like a dreamless sleep,
Okay.
or it's a journey to the underworld where he can keep philosophizing.
I love that.
It's so Socrates.
With the great minds of the past.
I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
I've always found that part of the apology really moving.
It is.
I mean, it shows that even in the face of death, right,
Yeah.
he remained committed to his pursuit of knowledge and truth.
Totally.
But before we move on to his views on death, I kind of want to go back to his encounters with those Athenian experts.
Yeah.
Can you give us like a specific example of how he challenged their wisdom?
One of the most famous examples is his encounter with Euthyphro,
Okay.
who was like this religious expert.
Okay.
And Euthyphro was about to prosecute his own father for murder.
Wow.
And Socrates starts questioning him
Okay.
about the nature of piety.
I see.
He asks Euthyphro, is something pious because the gods love it?
Oh, okay.
Or do the gods love it because it is pious?
Whoa, that's a deep question.
And what was Euthyphro's response?
Well, he kind of stumbled.
Oh, I bet.
Unable to give a satisfactory answer.
Okay.
And this encounter, like many others, shows that even those who claimed expertise,
Right.
they often lacked like a clear understanding
Right.
of the fundamental concepts they were dealing with.
So it seems like Socrates was less interested in providing answers
Yeah.
than in like provoking thought and
Absolutely.
challenging assumptions.
That was his thing.
Yeah.
His method was all about asking the right questions,
Okay.
not necessarily having all the answers himself.
Right.
He believed that true wisdom lay in recognizing
Yeah.
the limits of your own knowledge.
So he wasn't just trying to like win arguments.
Yeah.
He was trying to spark a genuine search for understanding.
Exactly. And that's what makes him so influential.
I see.
Even today,
Yeah.
he encourages us to think critically,
Right.
to question everything,
Hmm.
and to never stop searching for truth.
That's powerful stuff.
It is.
But his trial wasn't just about philosophical debate, right?
Right.
It was about real-world consequences.
It was.
Didn't Socrates sense that the jury wasn't really on his side?
He did, and in his defense, he even points this out,
Okay.
that the trial was fueled by, like, personal grudges,
Right.
political motivations, not a genuine concern for justice.
I see.
He even calls on his own supporters,
Mm.
like Plato,
Wow.
as character witnesses.
So he's trying to appeal to their reason
Yeah.
and sense of fairness.
Totally.
But despite all of his arguments,
Yeah.
Socrates makes this chilling prediction about what will happen after his death.
He does.
What does he say?
He predicts that silencing him
Mm-hmm.
won't silence his ideas.
Okay.
He warns the jury
Yeah.
that his followers
Mm-hmm.
will become even harsher critics
Wow.
of Athenian society,
Really?
emboldened by his sacrifice.
It's a haunting prophecy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really speaks to the enduring power of ideas.
It does.
Even in death, Socrates believed his message would live on
Absolutely.
and challenge the status quo.
He did. And you know what?
Yeah.
He was right.
Yeah.
Socrates' ideas did survive,
Mm-hmm.
and they flourished,
Yeah.
influencing Western thought for centuries
Absolutely.
to come.
Yeah. You know, it's really incredible how Socrates uses his trial, like as a platform, to get his philosophy out there.
Totally.
He uses it to really like challenge the Athenian definition of wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and to call for a more self-aware society.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of irony at play too, right?
Oh, tons. Like the
Yeah.
Socratic irony is like woven throughout this whole defense.
Oh, okay.
He often pretends to be like ignorant or naive
Right.
to kind of expose the flaws in his opponent's arguments.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, if I'm corrupting the youth,
Right.
it's only because I'm, wiser than everyone else, which of course I'm not claiming to be.
Yeah, it's so subtle and so clever.
It is. He's so quick-witted.
Right. I mean, I wonder if his accusers even knew
Yeah.
what they were getting into.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Socrates was a master at like turning the tables.
Right.
He wasn't just defending himself.
Right.
He was low-key critiquing Athenian society as a whole,
I see. So he was challenging their values.
their assumptions,
Yeah.
their whole way of life.
And this brings us to, one of his most famous quotes.
Right.
The unexamined life is not worth living.
Yes.
What do you think he meant by that?
Well, for Socrates,
Yeah.
the unexamined life
Yeah.
was a life lived on autopilot,
I see.
just accepting things at face value, no questioning.
Yeah.
no searching for deeper meaning.
Right.
He believed that true wisdom starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Recognizing that we don't know everything.
So it's not just about, like, book smarts.
No, not at all.
Or, being an expert in a particular field.
No.
It's about a way of approaching life, right?
A commitment to self-reflection.
Yeah.
And critical thinking.
And this was, like, a radical idea in ancient Athens.
That's
right?
totally radical.
Yeah.
Back then, society was all about conformity, obedience to authority.
Right.
And Socrates is like, nope, think for yourselves.
No wonder he was seen as a threat by some.
Right.
He's advocating for, like, a more enlightened citizenry.
Yeah, where people are empowered
Right.
to question the status quo.
But isn't there, like, a danger in constantly questioning everything? Like, doesn't society need some shared values to, like, function?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance, for sure, between questioning authority and maintaining social order. I mean, Socrates definitely pushed the boundaries.
Yeah.
You could argue his questioning contributed to his downfall.
I see.
But his trial also raises these questions that are relevant today.
Okay.
Like, how much dissent can a society tolerate?
Yeah.
Where's the line between free speech and dangerous ideas?
Yeah. And those are questions we're still grappling with.
Big time.
Especially today, right?
Especially today.
In the age of social media, where information spreads so fast.
So fast.
And it's so hard to know what's true and what's not.
What's real.
Yeah.
What's fake.
So, I mean, it makes you wonder what Socrates would have thought about all this.
Right. It's like we're bombarded with information.
Yeah.
But how do we filter it?
Yeah, how do we decide?
How do we know who to trust?
Right.
And this is where Socrates' emphasis on critical thinking and reasoned debate has never been more important.
So important.
Yeah.
Speaking of debate, I'm curious about Socrates' views on death.
Okay.
Especially, given that he was facing his own mortality. Didn't he say something about death being like a dreamless sleep?
He did.
Or a journey to the underworld?
Yeah, he doesn't seem to fear death at all.
Right.
In fact, he explores all these different possibilities with a sense of, like, philosophical curiosity.
Okay.
He imagines either a state of nothingness, like oblivion, or a chance to continue his, philosophical inquiries
Well, I love that. With Homer and Odysseus.
All the greats.
Debating philosophy for all eternity.
Yeah, it really speaks to his, like, insatiable thirst for knowledge.
Yeah.
And this belief that learning doesn't end with death.
But, I have to admit, I find his lack of fear kind of unsettling.
Really?
I mean, most people would be terrified.
I guess so, yeah.
In that situation.
It is remarkable.
Right.
He finds this strange sort of comfort in the uncertainty of it all.
Yeah.
And remember, he argues that, a good man can't be harmed in life or in death.
Right.
So it's unwavering belief in the goodness of the universe that seems to sustain him.
That's a powerful conviction.
It is.
But I wonder if his, willingness to die was motivated by, like, a desire to become a martyr for his cause.
Oh, interesting.
He knew his trial would make a statement no matter what happened.
That's a fascinating point.
Yeah.
He was definitely aware of the, like, symbolic power of this whole situation.
Yeah.
You could argue that his death actually cemented his legacy as a champion of truth and intellectual freedom.
And his story reminds us that challenging the status quo often comes at a price.
It does.
But it also shows that ideas have the power to transcend even death.
They do.
They can inspire others to, like, carry on the fight.
To keep asking the tough questions.
Yeah.
To keep pushing for a more just and enlightened world.
And this brings us to, like, another crucial aspect of Socrates' legacy.
Yeah.
His influence on his students.
Huge.
Especially Plato.
Oh, yeah.
Plato, of course, went on to become one of the most important philosophers in Western history. I mean, he founded the Academy in Athens, which is considered to be the first, like, institution of higher learning.
In the Western world.
In the Western world.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to think about, like,
the ripple effect of Socrates' teachings.
Yeah. I mean, even though he never wrote anything down himself, his ideas were preserved
through his students
and amplified through the work of his students.
Absolutely.
And it reminds us that, like, true impact often goes beyond like official recognition or institutional approval.
It spreads through personal connections, dialogue, the sharing of ideas among those who are inspired.
And that's why his story still fascinates us, right?
Absolutely. Like, even today.
I mean, Socrates embodies the courage to question authority, the pursuit of truth, even when it's hard, and the belief that a life lived in accordance with reason and principle is a life worth living. It makes you wonder how we can embody those same qualities.
Yeah, how can we be gadflies?
Right.
You know?
In our own right.
In our own time. Yeah. Provoking thought.
Challenging complacency.
In pursuit of a more just and enlightened world.
That is a great question.
It is.
And one that I think we're going to continue to explore.
Absolutely.
As we delve deeper into Socrates' prophecy in the final part of our deep dive. So we were talking about Socrates' prediction that his followers would become like even harsher critics of Athenian society after his death.
Right.
What did he mean by that?
Well, it was kind of a warning, you know. Okay. He believed that silencing him wouldn't actually silence the ideas that he, represented.
Right. So he was basically saying, you might get rid of me.
Exactly.
But you haven't seen anything yet.
Yep.
I mean, it's a pretty bold statement when you're facing a death sentence, right?
Totally. And it shows how deeply he believed in the power of ideas.
Right.
He was convinced they would spread and challenge the status quo no matter what.
And you know what? He was right.
He was.
His ideas did survive.
They did.
And they went on to shape, Western philosophy in really profound ways.
For sure.
But why do you think he was so convinced that his followers would become even more critical?
Well, I think it's partly because he knew his death would be seen as this kind of like martyrdom.
Yeah.
His students, like Plato.
Right.
They'd be so inspired by his example, his courage, his commitment to truth. They would see this whole trial as a symbol of how those in power often try to silence dissenting voices. Okay.
So that would fuel their determination to challenge things even more.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They wouldn't be intimidated by the possibility of facing, persecution. They might even welcome it, like as a badge of honor,
Yeah.
Like they were truly following in his footsteps.
It makes me think about how we view dissent today. We often celebrate those who speak truth to power, right? Who challenge the established order.
Right.
But there's always a risk there, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. There's always a risk.
Yeah.
Speaking out against injustice can be super dangerous, especially when those in power feel threatened.
And we see that throughout history, right?
We do, and we still see it today.
Yeah.
All over the world.
It makes you wonder what Socrates would have thought.
Yeah.
For the world today. I mean, with all the challenges we face,
oh, no.
We're living in this world.
This crazy world.
Of instant communication, right? And information and misinformation.
It's everywhere.
Spreading so quickly.
Wildfire.
It's hard to know what's true and what's not.
What's real, what's fake.
It's harder than ever, right? It is.
To know who to trust.
Yeah.
I mean, how do we even, apply his ideas about, self-examination, critical thinking?
In this environment.
Yeah. I mean, how do we not become...
That's
victims of our own biases, right?
It's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Socrates would tell us to, engage in thoughtful dialogue.
Okay.
Be open to listening to different views.
Right.
And to constantly challenge our own assumptions.
So it's not enough to just have, strong opinions.
Not at all.
We need to be open to having our minds changed.
Exactly.
Wow.
Socrates believed that true learning came from engaging with different perspectives, from having your beliefs tested and refined.
Through debate.
Through debate and conversation.
Yeah.
And it seems like humility is a big part of this.
Oh, huge.
We have to admit, we don't know everything, right?
Yeah.
We might be wrong.
Oh.
And I think that's one of the most important lessons we can learn from Socrates.
For sure.
I mean, he was a brilliant thinker.
He was.
But he was also deeply humble.
Yeah.
And he recognized that true wisdom lies in acknowledging the limits of our own knowledge.
Absolutely.
I'm also struck by how he was able to turn his trial into this platform for his ideas.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
He used it to highlight, the importance of self-reflection.
The pursuit of truth.
The pursuit of truth. The courage to speak out against injustice.
I mean, he knew he was risking his life.
Yeah.
But he refused to,
to compromise his principles.
Exactly.
And that's why he's still so inspiring.
Totally.
He reminds us that ideas have power.
They do.
That one voice can make a difference.
For sure.
And that standing up for what you believe in is worth the risk.
Absolutely.
It's a testament to the power of truth and justice.
Yeah.
And the human spirit.
The human spirit.
It's really amazing.
It is.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the life and philosophy of Socrates.
All right.
I hope our listeners have gained a deeper understanding of this amazing figure.
I hope so.
And the lasting relevance of his ideas.
They're so relevant, even today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise.
And I hope it inspires our listeners to, continue
keep thinking, Socratic thought.
To keep questioning.
As Socrates himself might say.
Right.
The journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And the pursuit of truth.
It's a lifelong thing.
It's a lifelong endeavor.
Yeah.